Hello, everybody, and welcome to Uski and Herbie. Uski is on assignment this week, so we got our good friend George Bashura, who does a great job with Shakedown Thunder, joining us every Wednesday when he can. So, George, thanks for joining us. Happy New Year, bud. How's everything in the family?
Happy New Year to you. Things are better. Let's just put it that way. A week removed from the beginning of 2021, and things are in a better spot than they were last week. We'll just leave it there.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, here's the show lineup, folks, for coming up tonight. Joining us shortly, Earl Grant, the head coach of College of Charleston, will be joining us. The CAA is a real mess with basketball. A lot of cancellations, a lot of COVID issues, but they found a way to play in a lot of games on the weekends. So he'll be joining us at 8 o'clock shortly, and then Lauren Rush, who writes for the Maryland Terrapins, for the student paper. She'll be joining us at 8:15 to talk about women's basketball. Women's Terrapins are going out to Minnesota. They're probably there right now as we speak, because they were flying out this afternoon. 8:30, Dave Vermont will be joining us from ESPN. Our friend from ESPN and Fox, who does bowling, does football, does everything. He does it at 8:45, and then at that's 8:30. At 8:45, Bill O'Neill, who is the Player of the Year, Players Championship from the Professional Bowler Tour, will join us at 8:45 to talk about his defense of his title. Coming up this weekend. They're doing a regional thing, George. So he has to go down to Richmond and bowl 6 games and then move on to the semifinals. That's going to be taped on Fox Sports One.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
And then it all culminates in a central location, right, for the championship.
right. I think Florida. There's some bowling alley down in Florida. Is going to be the essential area for everybody to finish. But it's very interesting. How they're setting this up. And my good friend Danny Wiseman is bowling in it, and he hasn't bowled in a tournament like that in a couple of years. So we'll get him on next week and see how he did. With new wrist and all that stuff.
It's
So
all it's all about the bubble location. Everyone's got a bubble location nowadays. So I I I'll just leave it there about my bubble location. We won't talk about my bubble.
well, speaking of bubble locations, I talked to Brendan Fries this afternoon. We'll talk more about this later. But I asked her, in the NCAA tournament for the men's side, they're doing that bubble thing there in your state of Indiana. They're playing all the games in one place. They're actually going to be doing the same thing in San Antonio, Texas, but they haven't told anybody yet. Yeah, but Brandon Fries, I had a chance to talk to her this afternoon, and this is what she had to say about it.
Great.
I got a question for you. On the men's side, they're doing this bubble thing for the NCAA tournament. Everybody going to be in one area for the guys. Why is the women's not doing the same thing?
They just haven't released it yet, to the best of my knowledge. I know they're evaluating potentially doing it all in San Antonio, but it has not, completely has not been, put out there, or I'm not sure 100%. They haven't been able to release anything of if and when. I don't have that information.
Okay, because I was just wondering about that. And talk about Minnesota. Talk about this team. I know they're 2-6, but it's still it looks like a very young team.
It's a very young team. I mean, she just most recently, when they allowed every transfer to be eligible, you're seeing a lot of different looks and lineups for Minnesota. So I think that's the most concerning part is, there's a lot of players that just haven't had a lot of games under their belt. So, from our end, it's, we can control what we can control is playing Maryland basketball. And, that's where we need to be. We're going on the road and we need to handle business how we have every step of the way.
Well, have a safe trip to Minnesota.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, yeah, they're in Minnesota as we speak, but you can watch that game tomorrow night, folks, on the Big Ten Network or also on FoxSports.com with the Fox Sports app. Yeah, Maryland women's basketball team is doing a lot better than the men's team. The men's team was 7-6. They beat Illinois the other night, but they haven't beat anybody good since they beat Illinois by a bucket. There was a bucket beater the other night.
Sometime that happens. I can say the same thing for the Irish right now.
Yeah. I've been trying to get a hold of Mike Bray every Monday morning. You know, when I get that teleconference call stuff or the Zoom call, and they don't ask me. I like to ask him questions. He's a cool dude. You know, he's a cool guy. You know, he's from Maryland. He's from this area, and he knows what I'm talking about. You know.
Well,
So,
maybe schedule one of those. You call them up and just do a one-on-one with them.
probably. Yeah. Well, let's bring in Earl Grant here, the head coach of the College of Charleston. Hey, Coach, how you doing?
I'm pretty good, man. I had a little hard time getting on the StreamYard. I've been zooming myself a lot lately, but StreamYard I got on. So how you guys doing?
I appreciate you joining us tonight. Let's talk about this wild and wacky season you're going to have with the CAA. Every day is something new, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. Certainly, I don't think any of us coaches signed up for this, dealing with the COVID and trying to figure out if you got 10 players or 7 players or, can you practice? Can you travel? So it's tough. But, I mean, obviously, we've been very fortunate. 3 months ago, we didn't know if we would be able to play games. And 7 months ago, the NCAA tournament was canceled. So I guess we're making progress. Fact that we're playing games and things are moving along, but it has been a little different.
Exactly. Let's just talk about there was news today that they moved the CAA tournament to Harrisonburg, Virginia. That's a little closer for you guys, a little bit, instead of going to Washington D.C.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I saw the news. I didn't know much. I didn't hear much about it prior to, so I didn't have much to think about it. Hey, as long as we're playing games. I think if we're playing games in March, that's a really good thing. So the venue, it really doesn't matter to me. I just hope that we are playing.
That's true. George, you got something?
So, Coach, how are the guys hanging in there with all this change that's been going on? Week day to day, week to week, not knowing what's going to happen the next day.
I mean, it's been a challenge. I think the whole time been starting back in August. One of the things that I try to do with my players and the staff is just say, hey, guys, we gotta find some peace and controlling what we can control. And really all you can control is, showing up to practice, showing up to workouts, good attitude, coming in there trying to work hard and get better. And that's it. So, we've been talking about that in August, is controlling what we can control, understanding that we're going to be a very, up and down season in terms of the emotional flow and the flows of, maybe being canceled. I know we had that this year. We had a big game against Richmond coming to town, and we were all fired up for the game. And the night before, we found out it was canceled. And, so it's been an emotional roller coaster. But, again, the biggest is just finding peace and controlling what you can control. I mean, simply.
Yep. So, Coach, are you guys allowed to have fans in the stands?
Yeah, we've been having about 1,200 fans in the stands. So we've been fortunate that way. We played in some gyms, man, where you could hear a tack drop out of the rafters and hit the floor. Very quiet. Our first game, it was at Carolina. We played the Tar Heels' first game of the year, and there's about 10 fans in there. And when I was at Clemson, I remember going there and there's 20,000, fans, and so it's been different. And you got to bring your own energy. You got to really take it back to, being a teenager on Saturday at 1 and use shirts and skins. You're just trying to stay on the floor. You didn't need fans. You just love to play the game.
Yep.
That's what we're doing right now. It's just the people who love it, who are really passionate about the game. I think they're going to have some success.
Yeah.
Do you find out who your bench coach is?
Go ahead.
Do you find out who your bench coach is? Who's the one of the loudest guys on your bench? Because you always talk about you getting your guys involved in the game and then keeping their head in there.
Right.
Who has really stepped out as the most local guy on the bench?
I mean, it's a combination of guys, man. But I do think you almost got to have a bench captain this year. When guys come out the game, that guy got to be up first, clapping and getting everybody else up. When a guy go for a loose ball, he's got to be fired up and he's got to be pointing at his teammates or other guys on the bench. But I think probably our best bench guy right now, man, is my video coordinator. He played for me. He was a walk-on he was a manager for me, then he was a walk-on for me. Now he's my video guy, so we've been around for 6 years. He's seen everything from day one when I got here. And so he's young. He just got done playing, a year and a half ago. So he's the guy that kind of, over there making a lot of noise and getting some of the players to stand up and cheer. So I definitely think it's important to have a bench captain.
That's true. Well, Coach, talk about this weekend. You got 2 home games, if it works out, against Northeastern. Northeastern's been really good the last couple of years. They won the tournament a couple of years ago, and they won the regular season title and all that stuff. What do you think about them this weekend? Praying that they come down nice and ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Bill Cohn, man, really good coach. I think me and him the longest tenured coach. Well, Pat Skerry would be one of the longest tenured coaches as well. But Bill they got a good system. They got good players that play the right way, and we've always had battles. It's always battle to play them. You really got to be sharp defensively. They're gonna test your defense, and they try to guard you as well, make things tough. So certainly it'll be a challenge. I mean, we're gonna be at home. I'm excited about that. I'm really happy for this type of game this early in the year. Just to really continue to see where we are as a team and see what progress we made in the last few weeks. Also to see what work we got. But it's definitely going to be a test that we're looking forward to.
That's true. Well, one last question to ask you. Let's talk about these protocols for COVID-19. What are you guys doing? Are you testing like 3 times a week, 2 times a week, or every day?
Yeah, we're getting 3 times a week. 3 times a week. We're wearing the contact tracing watches. They know when you're 6 feet and distance of anybody. Practice, we're still trying to be 6 feet apart from each other. The players got a 10-minute limit in the locker room. If they're not in practice, got the mask on in the building. So it's pretty strict, and it's very frustrating at times, for me and the players. But we try to adhere to things. We're fortunate where we have a lot of. So hopefully if we can continue to adhere to the rules and follow the protocol, maybe we can continue to play these games. So I think it has been a challenge. It's been frustrating, man, just to try to get kids to, walk in the hallways one direction, coming through one entrance, wear the contact tracing bracelets, wear the mask, all, so it's really hard, but we've been fortunate. We're playing. Hopefully we can keep it going.
That's true. Well, Coach Grant, thanks so much for coming on. I know you're busy guy, and good luck this weekend against Northeastern. And we'll hope to see you and hope to talk to you a little more down the road, and hope to see you in Harrisonburg March 6th.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Appreciate you guys having me on, man. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year,
You
Coach.
too. Happy New Year. Thanks, Coach. All right. That's Coach Earl Grant from the College of Charleston. Let's bring in Lauren, who is on the call. Lauren Rosh, who covers the Lady Terrapins. So, or the hi, Lauren.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks for coming on tonight. I saw you this afternoon with the question right after my question. So, and that was really nice to follow up there. So, let's just talk about this big game tomorrow for the Lady Terps. They're out there in Minnesota as we speak, and it's pretty interesting to talk to Coach Freeze on the bus.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a great matchup to see kind of how the team adapts to now the second game absence without Shanice Lewis in the lineup. She just tore her ACL meniscus against Michigan State. And so the Terps have been 3-0 on the road this season, and it will be great to see if they can kind of continue that high scoring that they've been doing on the road.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're doing really well, like scoring big points and all that stuff. And this Minnesota team is pretty, they're young. They're 2-6 in the overall and 1-4 in the conference. But it's very lucky that these people even playing with all this COVID-19 going on.
Yeah, and Maryland has been pretty good with cancellations so far, crossing my fingers. But exactly, so they're out in the Midwest this week playing Minnesota, and then they're going to move to Wisconsin, but they're going to stay out there, and that should hopefully limit kind of some of the spread of traveling back and forth.
Good point. George, you got anything for Lauren?
Well, Lauren, that goes back to the bubble that Chris and I just talked about a little bit ago. What's the situation there with fans in the stands, and what's the situation there with the games?
Yeah, so there are no fans allowed at Xfinity Center. So I've only been able to get to one home game in person so far this season, but it's just the media and the two teams and then their staff. Everyone's wearing a mask the entire time. And even at the media tables, minimum of 6 feet apart from everyone. Even the people who I work with at Testudo Times were 6 feet apart. So they're handling protocols very well there.
And how is the COVID on the campus?
How is COVID on campus?
Yeah, is it under control? Is it they got some issues, or is it? I know Notre Dame, they had some problems when everyone first came back, and it was a problem on campus. Has it been pretty good on campus for a while there?
So for the women's basketball team, Coach Freese was actually talking about it today. They've been doing a great job at just staying together as a unit and really she was saying that it's great that they love each other so much because they do truly spend that much time together. And they've all been talking about just continuing to hold themselves accountable and make sure, they're not putting anyone at risk and everything. And, on campus, we have testing and all of that as well. So
remember, only the strong survive, and if they keep playing for each other in that way, maybe they can get some magic going on too in the win column too.
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible to watch them play what they consider to be just Maryland basketball. That's always what they say. Whenever you ask, what was so special about this game, they just say, oh, we went out there and we played Maryland basketball. And to them, that just means all about teamwork, sharing the ball, and not playing as an individual. And you can see that. I mean, all of them are Ashley Owusu, who's just been a standout player for Maryland. Not only is she putting up the points, but the rebounds and the assists. The assists have been incredible. So when they share the ball, they do well. So exactly, if they continue to foster that close-knit relationship, it'll continue to be great.
That's true. Well, Lauren, I talked to Coach Freese today before your question about the bubble, for the tournament. Do you think that's a great idea down there? I know it's San Antonio, and it's still a great place to go, and you have different places, but being in one place, that's a lot better instead of going all over the country and ruining the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, so I think Coach Freese was saying today, there hasn't really been any information about that, but if that is in the works, I do think that it would probably be a very good idea to contain everything into a bubble. We saw with the NBA that the bubble worked pretty successfully, so we think that's the best way to mitigate the spread in the middle of the pandemic. Like you were saying before, it is really incredible that they've been able to kind of continue on with their season despite being in the middle of all this. So I think that's probably the best way to handle it would be keep everyone in one place together.
Yeah. I cover the other leagues like the Colonial Athletic Conference, and they're having a hard time, women and men's side, keeping games on schedules. I mean, emails from we're switching this game to this guy, and this guy going to play this guy. And it seems like the Big Ten, they have a little bit of a problem, but it's not like a widespread issue.
Yeah. The men have definitely had a lot more cancellations and reschedules than the women have. So I think it really is just luck of the draw almost. It's just the teams that they're playing, and they've been keeping safe so far. So we just have to wait and see.
That's true. Well, Lauren, talk about the publication. You work for the school newspaper, right?
So I work for the Testudo Times, which is SB Nation's website for Maryland athletics. So I work for them, and I have the women's basketball beat. So this is what I've been covering this season.
That's cool. Any cool memories of being doing all these games? Because we're both broadcasters as well, and we were talking about the other week about some cool places we've been to and places we've seen and all that stuff. Have you ever had any cool so far?
So this is my first time. This is my first year with the Testudo Times, my first semester. So I would just say when I covered the game in Xfinity, being there and having the experience, although it's what's going on is just so with the masks and the social distancing, it's very upsetting and all of that. But it was a once in a lifetime experience to cover a game during a pandemic, and that's something I'll never forget.
That's true. George, you got one more last thing for?
I was just going to say, with that, I mean, I've been covering Notre Dame sports for the last 3 years, The hardest part is not being there and covering the games, okay? Because they had to reduce the size of the press box and stuff. I guess the one piece of advice I would just say is stay humble to the process. And, people are like, oh, you're lucky you get to go cover these games. But people and you're probably experiencing this yourself, it's a lot of hard work. It's not that you're going to the game to go have fun and just socialize. You're going there, and then you got work to do. You got to pay attention to up and down the court. You got to pay attention to stats and what's going on, because that all makes the story that you're going to write.
Yeah, exactly. I feel very grateful for the opportunity that I've had at Testudo Times this semester, and hopefully to continue on. And that is exactly being there and covering that game and, working during this time. I'm so grateful to be able to do it.
It is cool. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope to see you tomorrow night on the, hopefully after the game is over. I don't know what my schedule is, but I know these games are, an hour and 25 minutes. It's done. I was watching
very quick. Yeah, very quick.
I was watching the Ravens game the other day. I'm like, okay, this thing tipped off at noon. I'm looking at my phone going at 1 going, wow, that thing's over with already? Jeez. Did anybody play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Have a great evening. Thanks for coming on.
You too. Thank you.
All right. See you. Bye. Yeah. So Lauren Rosh, who covers the Terps, the ladies Terps for the Testudo Times from SB Nation. So it's weird this year. I was thinking about looking at the schedule for the rest of the year for me. I'm like, I might want to go out to a game, but I don't know how safe it is with the whole COVID thing going on.
Yeah.
And I don't want to infect anybody I know, because I'm stubborn and want to go cover a game.
Well, not to get into personal stuff, but look at my situation. I can't go do what I want to go do and go see family. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I have to figure out what set my plan. I have to know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And one, I still can't go visit. It would be a visit through a window. Okay.
Right.
And you got to call the hotel and see if there's any restrictions before you even make an online reservation. So it's brutal.
Yeah.
And these kids and these student athletes, they're out there, they're doing their thing. I mean, that's something to say for these young kids.
Yeah. Like I was reading this year with the football teams, like they used to stay after the game and have Chick-fil-A, and this year was like on the bus, out the door, we'll stop at McDonald's somewhere, or something like that. Or
eat on the bus, as Coach Cully would say. We'll eat on the bus.
Yeah, eat on the bus.
Yep.
But it like over the past couple of years, you see them sitting there, this whole big tray of Chick-fil-A coming. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I want to take one of the sandwiches. Do they see me? Yeah, but but it's great. Yeah. So anyway, it's 8:23 here on the program. Thanks for joining us this evening, and that's George Bashura, who covers does his own publication, Shakedown Thunder Sports. You're starting doing hockey now, right, bud?
Hockey, yes. Hockey, we are into the thick of it. So the season, I'll be honest with you, the season's almost over.
Really?
They only have 3 more home series, and the season's gonna be quick.
Jeez, I thought they play until like March or April.
But what they've done with these schedules, Chris, it's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There's only Notre Dame has, like I said, they just had their first home stand of the season. Of the second half,
right?
And they only got 3 more home stands after this.
Jeez, that's crazy.
So it's bizarre. It's like where the season and the season's going to be over before you know it.
That's crazy. Well, they had to do something. They're trying to figure out what this virus is, and I feel like the virus changed everybody's schedule around. It's like with the Colonial Athletic Conference with the men's basketball team. Nobody plays during the week anymore. It's all weekends.
Well, and even with basketball, even with hockey games, they would typically play a Friday, Saturday schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to play on national TV, which Notre Dame has the contract with NBC for hockey as well as football.
Right.
They've been playing Saturday, Sundays. So it's weird. It's not Friday, Saturday. Friday night you go down to my man cave and I can come down here watch the game, and then they go do press conference. No, it's a Saturday, Sunday. It's a Saturday 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock start, and then Sundays are typically like a 5 o'clock puck drop.
Crazy.
So it's weird all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. Folks, I want to give you a program reminder next week here on the show. We're going to try to start around 8 o'clock, maybe a little bit later. We have Mike Murphy, who is one of the great broadcasters up in New Hampshire, won Sportscaster of the Year, and our good friend Johnny Holiday, who's been on the program once in a while. He won the Maryland State Sportscaster of the Year, and your friend Ryan Harris, who does a lot of good stuff with the Irish on the radio. He does a lot of stuff in Colorado. They'll be joining us next Wednesday night. We'll start around 8 o'clock. Just look at the website at Herbie FM Sports Radio at Webley.com, and we'll tell you what time we're going to be on next week. So it's going to be an interesting show. Real quick, before we get Dave LaMont in here, let's finish up the national championship and put that to bed. I know everybody tuned in on Monday night to watch I think it was a Set Discovery Channel. Was that Mike Rowe on Saturday night, Monday night on ESPN? With the dirty jobs. It was so bad. I didn't even watch it. It was like I was looking on my phone, going, "All right, it's 7-7," and all of a sudden it went to 14-7, and I'm like, "Okay, this is a blowout. Why are we playing this game?" So,
we were in the middle of an NCIS. What do you want to call that? When you're sitting there, we sat there. We watched a whole bunch of NCIS on Monday night. I had no need to tune into that championship game.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I were watching Mike Rowe, 6 feet of inches. He has the thing on Discovery Channel. He does all these different things. It's hooked up to. It's really cool. And then we were watching something else, and we were like, "Oh, it's 11 o'clock. We get ready for the teleconference call." But I had a chance to talk to Ryan Day after the game around 12:30 Tuesday morning, and I asked him about this whole year, to sum it up with the COVID virus and schedules and all that stuff. And this is what he had to say about that answer.
Or go ahead with your question.
Let's switch to the defense now.
Hey, Coach Day, thanks for taking my call. Looking back on the season, what is the difficulty about the season? I know with the coronavirus and all that stuff, was that the difficult part of the season to keep everybody together?
Yeah. There was a lot that went into that. This is, it's probably an hour answer to that whole thing. But yeah, it's been a lot with these guys. Having no fans, having no season, having games canceled. Yeah, it was a challenge, but wouldn't have it any other way. What these guys have learned and what our coaching staff has learned and this whole program has learned about, what our culture is all about. Very, very proud of that. And for the guys who are in the locker room who are going to be coming back, they have something to motivate them in the off season. That feeling of coming off the field. We felt that way coming off the field last year against Clemson, and now we feel the same way coming off the field against Alabama. So I'm going to use that as a motivation, in the off season.
All right. That's what he said. It was a tough season for everybody, and Ohio State barely got 7 games in. There's some teams like you guys, like Notre Dame and Clemson, and ACC had 85% of their games played. So
3 words. 3 words. Did not belong.
I know this gentleman wishes the Miami Hurricanes were in the final of the college football playoff because he's alumni of Miami, and my brother's a big Miami Hurricane fan, so it's bringing Dave LaMont. So Dave, you wish Miami could get back into the college football playoff because that whole town will go berserk, right?
Yeah, and it's a fan base that's just dying for that to happen again too. They're so stuck in the Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Erickson days of trash talking and finger pointing and all of that has gone away. It's a tough fan base really to keep happy. And even though the team improved this year a little bit, they laid 2 gigantic stinking eggs at the end of the year, especially the North Carolina game. And once again, the biggest problem they're having is they leave their fans with a sour taste in their final appearance of the year almost every year. And that's your last moment. And then you don't play again for months and you don't have a way to fix it. So that's their big issue.
Exactly. My brother's a big Hurricane fan, and I asked him about the game. He goes, "Don't even talk about it. I don't want to say anything. I'm just going to move on and worry about 2021." I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "You're the man that tells me everything." And then I tell him, and then he texts me 2 days later going, Malcolm Perry is leaving. Yeah, I'm like, well, I guess that's what you got to do.
And Cozy Perry, Malcolm Perry is on the Dolphins. Well, and Cozy Perry, look, if De'Ara King can come back, he's the man. And they have a quarterback coming in from California they're very excited about. So and N'Kosi Perry, remember, wasn't even supposed to play very much in that game, and he actually played probably his best game as a Hurricane. I certainly applaud his efforts, but I don't think that's a major loss for the program.
Exactly. George, you got anything?
So, Dave, like you, I work in a very tough fan base as well, with my covering of the Fighting Irish, and it's very difficult. I mean, the challenge is you as a media guy, you're trying to put a product out there, and all you hear is this negative feedback every single time. Nothing that you do is ever right. And it's almost, when things are good, everyone's quiet. Yeah. But when it goes south quick, and it's hair on fire.
Well, I used to do, going back a ways now, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I used to do a morning talk show here along with a couple of other people. One of them was Bob Wischusen, actually, who's an ESPN broadcaster now. And we knew that, say, if the Dolphins lost on a Sunday, we had 3 days of shows where we could walk in at 5:59:50, start the show at 6 without any problem at all because we had callers backed up like airplanes at an airport. And when they won, we would have to invent things by Tuesday in order to get through until you almost rooted for them to lose just so you'd had easy shows. And now with people being able to sit there in front of a computer or grab a phone and complain in almost real time, or the people who do what I call the Zapruder film people, who then take a picture of the screen of something they don't like and they throw it up on Twitter. See, this is the problem. They played this formation defensively, and why is, everybody has always been a critic, but now you can do it that fast, and it does make it more difficult. You do get some people who are happy when things are going well, or who aren't as absorbed in the, oh my God, my life is falling apart because a 19-year-old kid dropped a pass. But there are some pretty mean people out there too.
Oh my God,
it's brutal. It's very difficult sometimes, and it's funny in my aspect when Notre Dame lost to Alabama. My teaser to my article was, it's not that Notre Dame didn't belong, is that Alabama's in a league of their own.
Mm-hmm.
I caught some criticism for that, but then after Alabama won the other night, all of a sudden everyone's like, Alabama's in a league of their own. I'm like, you guys are the ones that criticized me for saying that. I know it stings when they beat you, but when you look at it in reality, there's Alabama and there's everybody else. There's no mistaking that.
This year, yes. That might be the best offensive team that won a championship I've ever seen in college football. Defensively, they were not at the level they have been before. They didn't have to be. Nick Saban has realized, and this is why he's a great coach, whether you like him or not, and people down here hate his guts. But you realize he's a great coach because he read the room and went, okay, I can't do this the way I've been doing it if I'm going to continue to be a championship coach. So he emphasized offense. He brought in some great offensive minds. Lane Kiffin first, before Kiffin left. Steve Sarkisian, he's going to bring in Bill O'Brien, who's got experience at that, and don't hold what happened in Houston against Bill O'Brien because he's not going to have those responsibilities at Alabama. and that was the wisest thing Saban did, was understand I want to keep winning. So he changed things up. If you continue to do the same thing over and over again, eventually, even if you're great, you'll get caught and somebody will pass you. So he got passed, and now he's back on top.
And by the way, that's Einstein's theory of change, right there, quoted by Dave LaMont.
Yeah, or Saban's theory of change, as opposed to the definition of madness, which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that,
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add to your point about Notre Dame. The thing that hurts the Irish is what's happened to them in these types games when they've gotten to a certain point, and because Notre Dame carries such a big name in college football, that when they do get hammered, it seems to be more dramatic of a loss and carries more in the eyes of the public. So unfortunately, the run they've been on in these games and the way they've finished out seasons doesn't help them. They're going to need to break through one year and win a playoff game. And that's going to make they got popped in the ACC championship game. They've had trouble in these playoff games. That's the thing they've got to break through to change the perception, much like Miami has a perception to change and other programs around the country do.
Yep. And that was what I was making my simile to, was the fact that, it's just very difficult. You have a great season, and then you get to that point, and it's a spike downward quick.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, Dave, you used to cover the Orioles when you were in Fort Lauderdale. You're the guy behind the public address announcing.
Yeah, I was.
What about the Orioles, and what do you think about the Mets getting the guy from Cleveland?
Well, Lindor's a magnificent player. I mean, he is one of the top 10, maybe top 5 players in all the majors. And Carrasco is very well thought of in Cleveland as a clubhouse leader. And he's a guy where you give him the ball every 5 days and you just sit down and know you're going to get a decent and sometimes a great performance out of him. He's an innings eater. And listen, the guy came back from leukemia, for heaven's sakes. I mean, that's inspirational alone. As for the Orioles, I like the fact that they've just decided to stop buying free agents and patching the leaks in the roof, and that they're going to rebuild the roof, and that's going to take time. I think they've improved their farm system. I like John Means as the number 1 starter. I think the best analysis I read about Means was 2 years ago he had location and had a great year. Last year he found velocity but didn't have a great year. If he can put the two together in 2021, he will become a true ace pitcher. I'm not looking for the playoffs for the next few years. I just want to see progress, and I'm hoping that that's where we're going with the Orioles.
Well, I think Chris Davis got to go. Chris Davis got to go. He's the worst $195. I can even hit a $195 and still hit home run.
The funny thing is, he's such a decent guy and really liked that it's hard to be vicious about Chris Davis. But yeah, his effectiveness as a batter is long gone, and he used to be able to really pick it at first base, but he's been slowed by some injuries, and I think his defense isn't quite where it was either. So you can't even toss him out there in that regard. I applaud him for sticking with it. He certainly had some issues, but I agree. He's just, unfortunately, he is just a hole in the lineup, and doesn't even put the ball in play most of the time. So he's not helping, and I don't like saying that, but it's a fact.
Go ahead, George. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the best part about it is that they're figuring out a way to put fans in the stadium this season.
I hope so. I don't live. It doesn't take me but about a half hour to get to a Marlins game if I want to go see a ball game, and I do enjoy live baseball very much. Always have, and I would love to go to games again this year, as long as they do it the right way. And, the Florida Panthers hockey team, which only plays maybe 10 minutes from my house, is going to try 5,000 fans limit this year in their building. The Heat, no fans right now, and the Dolphins did have, and the Hurricanes had a cap of 13,000 at Hard Rock. I would love to see that. I don't know if I think you're going to have to limit capacity. The way things have started with the vaccine rollout, a little slow on the uptick at the moment. So by April, if we indeed start in April, I can't see all of a sudden going to, say, opening day and having 35,000, 40,000 people there. That's just not going to be possible.
No, I think it's going to take 2 or 3 years until everybody's back to that 45,000 people for opening day. I think it's going to be a slow process. Yeah,
I think 2022, I can see it. I'm cautiously optimistic about football. I think that's going to be our test. And by that time, of course, if we're having a normal baseball season, we're getting close to the playoffs and we're getting close to World Series and all that. And maybe we don't have to put the World Series in one city like we did this year, or the and ALCS in one city as we did. That's hopeful thinking. And I think we do have a little reason now, even though things are still pretty rotten and the death toll is just ridiculous at the moment. I think we have at least a little bit of a reason to say we can look ahead and realize that the season that you all were talking about before I got on here about college football should be back to pretty close to normal by September.
Exactly. Well, Dave, I also know you from doing a lot of the bowling on TV. And when's your first assignment for the PBA?
I don't have one yet. I'm waiting to find out if there's going to be anything. I was supposed to do the Flow Summer Series again, and of course that never happened. And my scheduling just didn't work out this year. So I'm in a holding pattern, hoping again, with all my might. Because I'll be honest with you guys, there's nothing I enjoy more than doing the PBA, even over basketball or football. I just love being around the people, love being around the broadcast team, and it's a biggest joy of my career. So I'm hoping I get that opportunity coming up.
Yeah. We got Bill coming up in 4 minutes. Yeah, Bill O'Neill. Yeah, last year winning the Players Championship, and this year with that new format. That sounds pretty fun, doing the regional thing. It's like an NCAA tournament in January.
And it's also kind of a bubble at the same. It functions as a sort of a mini bubble too, to get everybody in there. I thought that was a great idea, very creative thinking, because let's face it, every sport took a whack on the knuckles, and bowling too. All of a sudden, you went from that big event in Vegas, and you had one tournament out of all of that happened, and then you went on a pause. You had to do the event in Maine, not in Maine, and you had to do it without fans. The team championship, that wasn't the same. Everything was different. It's no fun to have to not have fans there, even though you don't put 4,000 people in there, but you put it in an intimate setting, it can get pretty rowdy and pretty loud. And I think the players feed off of that, especially when you're doing the team championship. So again, you just have to adjust. You have to be very willing to ad lib to get by, like baseball is done, like the NBA is being forced to do right now with all of their problems. And college basketball is seeing, I get emails all the time from the ACC about cancel this, cancel that. This one's been rescheduled. It's still an issue. And so I'm glad that the PBA came up with this concept. I think it's very clever.
Yeah. I think, Tom Clark, I talked to him before the holidays, and he said, hopefully by the end of the year, with everything with this vaccine, he might start getting some people back in to watch it, fan-wise. Yeah, but it's going to take time.
And you don't want to be the one that has the super spreader event. You don't want to be the guy or the organization that opens up too early and all of a sudden things get worse. At the moment, the experts have kind of been right about this all along. One of the things they told us was after the holidays, there was going to be a jump. And sure enough, there's a jump. And listen, we had company at our house. We had some family. We didn't completely isolate ourselves at Christmas time. We were fortunate nobody got ill. But around the country, people who had to fly and they did, travel, stay in hotels, do things against the advisement. The experts have nailed this, whether you like to admit it or not.
Yeah. I had a good friend. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Dave, Chris having all these PBA bowlers on, I've not bowled in forever and a day, and I'm going out and pulling the bag out of dusting the bag off and the balls, and going to invest in a pair of new bowling shoes because my other ones are dry rotted, but because I don't believe in using, paying for shoes. So if I'm going to pay for shoes, they're going to be my own. So I'm now inspired to go back out there and get myself back to playing shape to do some bowling. And Chris's chat, maybe if they do that tournament next year, the regional tournament, maybe I'll go out there and give it a shot.
Hey.
You better be good. because you'd be surprised what you run into there. A while back I was competitive, and my career kind of took over, and I haven't had a chance to do any real much of anything in bowling other than recreational. But it's an awesome sport, and it's just for the hell of it. I mean, even if you're just going to go, as they would say in tennis, hit and giggle, and just throw it down and just see how many you get, and not worry about how good you are, it's still a lot of fun.
Oh no. If I was to go out there, I'd still be very difficult myself. Like I haven't picked the ball up in forever, but I'd still be giving myself crap for not making a spare or something.
Sounds like me on the golf course. I'm like a 14 handicap, which is the definition of mediocrity. And I tell anybody I meet for the first time, I said, I've been playing a long time. I'm going to hit some shots you won't believe, both good and bad. And that's the same thing with bowling. That's the fun thing about sports like that is you can have moments where you are doing what professionals do. You can string together a few strikes, you can make some spares, and then all of a sudden your lack of consistency will show, and you'll go back down to earth. Same thing with golf. I can hit some good shots every once in a while. I can make a long putt every once in a while, but not over time. No.
What's your career high in bowling? What's your high game?
Wow. I would say 269 sounds right.
I got him by 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
279 for me.
Very good. Yeah, that you really made me think, but that number popped into my head first.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I had my moments. I'll admit. Now the game, when I started broadcasting, and my first analyst was Chris Barnes, who is the ultimate scientist out of all these guys. I don't know anybody who's more of a freakazoid scientist than Chris. And I started hearing things that I didn't understand. And I've learned a great deal. I'll never know what they all know. But over the 10 years with Chris and with Carolyn Doran Ballard and of course, Randy and Kelly Kulick and everybody I've had a chance to work with, you find that's what I always tell people. They look at bowling as, oh, that's all. And I go, you don't really get it. You don't understand the science behind the bowling balls, the oil patterns, the differences, how some players, all of this stuff, one hand, two hand, it's much deeper than the casual fan realizes.
Oh, it's definitely a science. It's about angles too.
It's about everything. And I didn't realize, and I don't know, it was a few years ago, I forgot how I found this out, about topography books on bowling centers that explain, Oh yeah. Well, Bill could straighten you out on that. There are bowling centers that have books.
About it. Let's bring Bill in. Bill.
Oh, hey.
On. Hey.
All right.
Guess what you got? And Dave there in the other corner.
What's up, Dave? All right.
And welcome to Hollywood Squares, Bill.
I didn't know we were doing it. I didn't know we were doing a joint thing here. I wasn't paying attention.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
You don't win a car. We don't have.
Yeah. I was telling them, as I learned over the years about how scientific the sport is, I said, it was like 5 or 6 years ago, I found out there's books on topography for certain bowling centers that people were telling me about. I'm like, you mean, that's not like you can go to Barnes & Noble and buy it, but it's way more complicated than the average fan realizes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, a lot of us didn't even really realize it until probably the last, 10 years, 15 years, it really become a thing that we talk about a lot. And it just something that we always kind of knew, like, hey, this pair kind of stinks. This lane acts different. But it just, now we're actually getting the science. And, Kegel has machines that go down there and measure all these things and can tell you, what's going on out there. And I think, for most people, I think they look at it and they probably use it as they try to use it like, oh, they see the graph and they're like, oh, this lane's going to hook more. I see in this here, but really those kind of things should be used more as a reference point, just to kind of like reaffirm what you're seeing out there, because still the people who are in front of you are going to determine, just as much, if not more, than what the topography is going to be.
So Bill and Dave, you're talking about all this, what goes into bowling, right? Now you're making me think about my days and where I did all my bowling. Right behind the bowling alley was a train track.
Oh, you know what? Where I started out, when I moved here to South Florida, I bowled at a place called Manor Lanes, which is still there. And there was a train track not far away. And there was also behind me one of the first sports bars, like in the whole darn country practically before that thing took off. And it was a small house. And but I don't know if the train tracks had any factor on that or not. And I was throwing a backup ball before it became cool.
I can just remember now making me go back and think standing on the lanes and feeling the lanes vibrate underneath me as I'm making my approach.
I don't know about topography, but a train going by as you're bowling probably affects your score a little bit.
Yeah. Got to stop middle approach.
I was going to say something about the books. Now I understand why Nelson Burton Jr. was every week that Chris Schenkel went on TV going, let's get Nelson on the lanes. I should have thought that when I was a kid, what he was doing. Yeah, and I think Belma might have the books. And that's why Belma is winning all the titles. Yeah, you may want to check into that, Bill.
Let's straighten this out right away. First off, Bill, have you actually conceded the Player of the Year vote, or are you still contesting this with the Supreme Court?
It's not there yet. They won't hear the case yet, but I haven't conceded, no.
All right, good boy. That's. I'm happy for you. If I were you, I'd fight this till the end.
All the way to the end.
Yeah.
We'll try to say, you know what? We'll do a little pro wrestling. We'll set you up in a steel cage, and we'll flick the lights on and off to take you outside the sanction of the PBA, and you guys can just go steel cage match, winner take all.
I'd love to throw him through a table.
We're throwing a ladder match to top it.
That's right.
Well, I'm very old school on my wrestling. I don't follow it anymore. My wrestling goes back to the 70s, 80s, and that was the stuff that I loved when I moved here. It was big in South Florida, and so that's the stuff I remember, those certain little phrases and things that, we could do it in the PBA. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, I was big into wrestling when I was a kid, too, and I just like you, I wasn't in it for a long time, but now my son, who he's just about to turn 8, is really, really into it. Now I'm getting back in because he watches it all the time.
Yeah, I watched him when I was a kid in the 80s. Like, we were at George Animal Steel and
sure,
and all those people. Yeah, I had the figurines. I used to fight with this ring, and I used to pound the crap out of those things. It was like they're worth money now. And I look at mine downstairs at my parents' house, going, "Well, that has a nick." And forget getting money off of that. Because we pounded those things.
George used to spend time. George spent some time down in Hollywood, Florida, which is just south of Fort Lauderdale, and there was a bar that had a photo of him. And I still go to this place, and they remodeled it, and now I can't find a photo, which sucks because it was it was George the Animal Steel autographed picture, and it's gone.
Yeah. Well, next week on Hollywood Squares, we'll bring a guy on the program. Maybe we'll try to give Bill a new car, or a new bowling ball, whatever. Because, our budget is so zero. Yeah. So, well, Dave, thanks very much for coming on tonight, and enjoy the rest of your winter months. And we hope to see you on TV.
I hope to see me on TV too, especially if I can sneak out and see Bill and the rest of the gang in action. I would love that. Thank you guys for having me. Take care.
Good seeing you, Dave.
You're welcome.
See you, Bill. Bye.
See you. Bye. All right, Bill. That's the Hollywood Squares moment. Thanks. Sorry for putting you off. Caught you off guard there.
That's all right.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, let's talk about this weekend. We start the Players Championship regionals. So you're heading down to Richmond, right? The bowling, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to leave early Friday morning and get down there for we have practice starting at 1:00. So yeah, I'm going to get down there and get a few hours in, and then get ready for 28 games this weekend.
Oh wow! So just talk about the format. You guys pull 28 games, and then I guess they cut them down, and then you tell people don't say anything. It's going to be on TV later in the month, and don't say anything.
Well, yeah. So it'll be all live on 14 games Saturday, 14 games Sunday. 4 blocks of 7, and there'll be 4 different lane patterns. And
right.
so and then they'll cut to the top 5, and then those five players will the following week head down to I think it's in Florida to tape the tape all the shows. So that's cool. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of bowling for a weekend, but looking forward to getting back out there.
Nice. So you might have a guy named Danny Wiseman would be bowling with you in Richmond. I talked to him before the holidays, and he's actually going to bowl down there, in Richmond, and he was like he's looking forward to it, but he hasn't bowled in a very long time because of his wrist.
Yeah, I hope his wrist is all right. I know he's had some problems, in the past with his wrist, and I mean, 28 games is a lot for anybody, especially somebody who's coming off of wrist issues. But he bowled a tournament not that long ago. I thought it was some point during the season. I think he might have bowled a tournament champions, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So
I think something like that. He said he had to pull out or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully he's able to compete and do well.
Yeah. Go ahead, George. I know you want to talk bowling.
Oh, I'm just this whole season of COVID and things getting better. How difficult is it not having fans, sitting behind you and along the lanes, watching you guys do you guys battle it out for a tournament?
It's pretty odd. We're used to having people there to kind of feed off of and slap some hands after you're win a match or something and get pumped up with the crowd, and we can't do it, which stinks. But hopefully, we've been saying it for months now, but hopefully sooner than later, we get this thing under control. We can go back to doing that again.
Does the PBA have you guys in a testing protocol?
No, not that I'm aware of. Maybe for the TV shows, maybe I'm not really sure. I haven't spoken too much because I really don't know.
Okay,
gotcha. I wanted to talk to you about a story that you and your dad did for flowbowling.com. How cool is it to have your dad still helping you in your game?
It's awesome. He was with me the last 2 days. We were practicing and getting last minute finishing touches on some things before I head out this weekend. So it's always great to have somebody that's always there for you at home that nobody knows my game better than him. So I wouldn't call on anyone else to help me out because at this point he's gotten me where I am now, and I'm ride or die with my dad. So he's the best.
You have 11 PBA titles, and you should be in the Hall of Fame soon, right? That's the criteria, right?
I'm just going to keep bowling and keep trying to win, and then the more you keep doing that, the less those questions even matter. It's just kind of a foregone conclusion. So hopefully, just keep going out there and winning and doing my thing.
Yeah, I was doing some research yesterday. Me in the bowling. I've been watching bowling since I was a kid. And if you win this week, you could actually tie Dan Saran Jr., Dave Ferraro, and Steve Hopkins, who won this thing twice. And this is all the way back in the early 90s. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Dave was one of my favorite bowlers when I was a kid. Just watching him, and as I got a little bit older, like in my high school days, watching Steve Hoskins was he was the guy that you kind of looked at and was like, oh, I want to bowl like that. That's the guy. It's really cool. So, it'd be awesome.
Bound. Yeah, and he looked like he had more muscle than Pete Weber. I'm like, where did he come from? Yeah. Well, Bill, I appreciate you coming on tonight. I know you have a busy schedule, getting everything packed up. Have a safe trip down to Richmond, and hopefully we can see you on TV and again this in February. But it's going to be the Richmond one is going to be airing February 7th on FS Fox Sports 1. So we'll keep it quiet. We'll tell them we won't say a word. And then you just get everybody on all around the different types of regions, and then you guys do a live thing or something like that at the end of the month of February, right?
Yeah, it'll be at the end of February. Yep.
Cool. All right, man. Have a safe trip. Thank you so much for coming on. And
no problem. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. All right, folks. That was our Bowling Hollywood Squares. We'll do that every Wednesday night at 8:30 here on Herbie. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I caught Bill on board. Yeah,
we didn't know where that was going to go, and all of a sudden he's talking about topography and how it affects bowling, and I'm like, holy cow! Because how much does having a train track behind your bowling alley affect your game? A lot.
Exactly. I had a chance to bowl down in what was it, Grand Prairie, Texas, and they have a train track behind the bowling alley too. But I don't think it works anymore. But I was down there to bowl, and it was like the awe when I walked in there because I was a kid. I was watching this as a kid and like, hey, this is the Quaker State. I was like, oh my God. And I asked the guy when I got there, like, can I go on lane 39 and 40? And he goes, no, they have to use that for league play. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Because that's the way that Bob Benoit bowled the perfect game. You know, I was like, I would
here. You were looking to get out.
I wanted to say that.
Yeah,
exactly.
I get it.
Yeah, well, George, I think you got to roll. I appreciate you coming on tonight, and yeah, we'll do this again next Wednesday. Yeah, so thank you so much, and yeah, we'll keep in touch. And if you need anything, let me know. And are you doing your show this weekend?
I got to. I need to get back in the saddle after what I went through at the beginning of the year there. So, not Notre Dame wise, but just family wise. I need to get back in the saddle. So tonight was a really good thing for me to get back on and get into the groove of not worrying about that stuff and getting back on with day-to-day activities. So great to be on. Thank you for having me on, Chris.
All right, man. Well, we'll see you next Wednesday. And don't forget, next week we got the Sportscasters of the Year coming on from New Hampshire to Maryland to Colorado. So if anybody wants to tune into that, it's going to be a very interesting show.
Yep, and I'll definitely get with you on the Ryan Harris interview.
Yeah, I'll text you and let you know. I think it's Tuesday or Wednesday, but I'll let you know. So.
Thanks, Chris. Take it easy.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
See you. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning us in here at the top of the hour. 9 o'clock. It was fun having the bowling version of Hollywood Squares. Coming up in a minute here, we got Greg Murray, who covers the Lady Hoosiers, the women's basketball team. And then Kyle Barker will be joining us at 9:15 for the Baltimore Beatdown. The Ravens taking on the Bills in Buffalo. And then at 9:25, we hopefully get JJ Regan, who covers the Capitals, at 9:25. In the meantime, let's bring in Greg. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks so much for coming on tonight, and Happy New Year to you and your family. How's everything going?
Yeah, not too bad. Happy New Year to you as well. Just like just like most of us, we're taking it one day and 1 week at a time in this crazy time that we have. But overall, I can't complain all that much. Things are going well.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about the Lady Hoosiers. They're doing a pretty decent job. They're 7-2 on the season, and I guess they played Maryland really tough, but the Lady Terps are very tough with Brendan Freese.
Yeah, Maryland is obviously very, very good when it comes to women's basketball. That's the one game that Indiana's lost in Big Ten play. They're 5-1 right now, and that's a game that's always circled on the calendar for Indiana, especially as they've really improved the last 5-6 years under Coach Moore, and she's in year 7 now, and they've just slowly climbed up the rankings and, are now expected to finish at the top of the league or at least close to it. And Maryland is there, every single year. So Maryland sets the bar for the top of the league, and Indiana, to finish at the top, you're going to have to go through Maryland. So that was a game I know they were looking forward to. And the big switch in that game was right at the opening tip. Maryland gets the ball and shoots a 3. They go up 10-0 within a minute and a half, I think it was, or a minute 45. So Indiana's down 10-0 and had to fight their way back the whole time. But they cut it to 2, made it a game. Obviously didn't win that game, but I think it showed that they can play with anybody, certainly in the Big Ten, but solidified themselves as a top 20, a top 15 team. But that one stings. There's no doubt that whenever Indiana goes up against Maryland, they've never beaten Maryland, and that seems to be one of the next few steps as Indiana continues to get better and better and better. That next step's going to be beating Maryland one of these days.
Yeah, it sounds like I talked to Brendan Freese beginning of the year, and I asked her. It seems like when they became from the ACC to the Big Ten, it sounds like it was like I got to use a college football analogy. It was like when Florida State came into the ACC and Florida State ran over everybody like a freight train, and then also now everybody is now Florida State, and then you got Clemson, who's a little bit better, than Florida State. But it seemed like it took the league maybe 4 or 5 years to get. Oh, we got to get the recruits. We got to get people who are just like Florida State. Do you see that in the recruiting in Indiana? They're trying to do just like Maryland.
Yeah, and it was interesting because that time period when Maryland came in the league was also when Rutgers came into the league. And when it comes to women's basketball, I think that may have been the sport that was most affected by, as far as Maryland and Rutgers being very, very good historically. Rutgers has won titles. Maryland obviously has had tons and tons of success and has continued that. It's Indiana was projected to win the league in the preseason this year for the first time in program history. They were, the media picked them, the coaches picked them. But the way I've always thought through this is that this is Maryland's league until proven otherwise when it comes to women's basketball. They have won the regular season, or at least clinched a share of the regular season for 5 of 6 years, I believe. I think Ohio State snuck in there and won it one year, and I'm sure Maryland was maybe one game back in that time. So, they're 48-4 at home in Big Ten play, or at least that's what they were when Indiana played them a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it's just pure dominance by Maryland. So, to your question, I think it's taking the Big Ten some. Not even because Maryland came into the league, but just generally the league is building up. There's a lot of good women's basketball teams in the league, but at the same time, I'm not so sure that there's lots of Final Four contenders. Maryland has won every year. I think Indiana is good enough to potentially make a run to that second, third weekend of a college basketball tournament. Michigan is I think up to number 12 this week in the rankings. Ohio State is undefeated, albeit some canceled games this season already with COVID, so they haven't played quite as much, but are very, very good teams. So there's a lot of good teams in the Big Ten, and so I think it's becoming maybe more than just can anybody beat Maryland. There's now several contenders that at least can play on the same floor, which hasn't always been the case.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow you guys have a early afternoon game against Purdue on a Thursday afternoon. That's unheard of in these days, but I guess they try to get everybody in as best they can. Plus, with the COVID situation, want to get them out and get going. Plus it's a state school, so it should be okay.
Yeah, and it works out for Indiana and Purdue because the men also play Purdue tomorrow. So selfishly, from a radio broadcast standpoint and just a fan viewership standpoint, the women play at 4 up at Purdue, which is about a 2-hour drive from Bloomington between the schools. And then the men play in Bloomington at 7 o'clock. So It's a perfect afternoon, evening doubleheader, and Indiana, Purdue, it's always fun to get those schools together, especially on the hardwood. That rivalry has taken a little bit of a new wrinkle with the last half decade or so when Coach Moran coaching Indiana, because she was a Big Ten champion point guard at Purdue, while Purdue's head coach, Sharon Versup, used to be the head coach of Indiana women's basketball. It was only for 1 year, but both head coaches in this rivalry have ties to the opposite school. So it's an extra wrinkle. Indiana has dominated the rivalry recently. They've won 6 of the last 7, and have won pretty handily in those ball games. But it's I went to Indiana. I've grown up in Indiana, and anytime you can get these two schools together, it's a whole lot of fun. And tomorrow is a special day when it comes to basketball, because not only have the women's game, as I said, at 4, but then the men play at 7. So it's going to be a fun day, and hoping for a couple of Hoosier wins.
Yeah. How difficult is it to broadcast now, with nobody in the stands except for cardboard cutouts of people, and you probably hear yourself too much during the game going, dude, calm it down, man. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I have my headphones, the volume of hearing myself, I have it cranked up way higher than it normally is, just so I can almost drown myself out, rather than the fans that are cheering over me. As you said, I'm surrounded by cardboard cutouts when we're broadcasting from Assembly Hall, and then when the team goes on the road, I'm still broadcasting from home. I'm going to the radio station and broadcasting from the studio off of monitors and things like that. So there's a whole group of different challenges here this year as a broadcaster, and every profession and player and coach, and everything's different this year. But it's super weird. It sucks. I mean, it's just not the same.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy this year. I'm watching games and they're like, Hi, welcome to NBA on NBC, on CB, on ESPN. I'm from my home studio.
Yep.
What?
Yeah, I have a dog, and it's my wife and my dog, and then we have a baby on the way, which is this crib behind me, but not here quite yet. But I oftentimes I'll go to my parents' house, which just happens to be down the street from where we're at now, because they have better internet and they don't have a dog that barks as much as I do. So I have to completely switch up what I do to try and broadcast these games. It's a whole new world this year. It kind of is what it is, and we're making the best of it. But Coach Moore and we have a weekly talk show every Monday night, and we were just going back and forth. She asked me what the experience was like and things like that. I just don't want to do it more than this year. I get it. It makes sense. I understand not traveling and all of the things that are happening in the world and health wise and things like that. I just hope that we can return to normal and I can travel and do games on the road, and then fans can be there. I'm just ready to go back to normal.
I haven't done a game since March of last year when this whole thing started, and I just stayed home and just doing Zoom calls and talking to coaches. I covered the whole entire college football playoff from sitting right here, and I'm like, this is great. Like, I don't have to get on the bus and fly anywhere. I told my mother, like, I don't have to leave my home. And she goes, you're saving cash. I'm like, okay, I'm trying. But anyway,
the gas bills are down in the cars. That's for sure.
Yeah, like I'm not using a lot of gas in my car, and I, putting, mileage on my car and saving gas, and just sticking around here going, oh, in a few minutes I got to talk to somebody and go into the office. Yeah, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's interesting too, just going forward, because Zoom and this visual technology and things like that. It's so easy and convenient, I guess. I even as things go back to normal, it's going to be interesting to see just how often you use this. I can talk to you, about from across the country, and it doesn't matter where we are, and I can cover a Brenda Freeze press conference if I so choose, and you can do a college football national championship down in Miami. Technology is a beautiful thing. I just wish that it wasn't the only option we had, that we could go in person if we so choose, but not meant to be.
I think it's fun, and it's also, it's just, like Dabo Sweeney said today. They said it a couple weeks ago. He goes, I just started using Zoom this year. That's all I'm starting. I never used it before, so I'm a gifted guy now, so I know how to use Zoom.
Yeah, I never heard of it. Now we use it multiple times a day.
Exactly. Well, Greg, congratulations on you being a father. And I want to say, that's great that you have one on the way, and good luck to you and your family, and hopefully everything's good. And we'll talk to you hopefully before the Big Ten play.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate the time. Have a good one.
All right, buddy. Thanks, man. All right, folks. That's Greg Murray, who covers the Indiana ladies basketball. So thanks for joining us here. We're gonna, get back up to the. Let's change the. So, folks, next week on the program, just want to let you know we've been pushing this all tonight. It's a big show for us next week. We'll enjoy it. Hopefully the pictures come up here. These fine gentlemen who me out throughout my career of broadcasting, they'll be joining us. They've been named Broadcaster of the Year here in Maryland. Johnny Holley will be joining us at 9. Mike Murphy will be joining us sometime in the 8 o'clock hour, and we'll be with Ryan Harris, former Bronco, who won the Denver Bronco, who won the Super Bowl 50. He won a couple of years ago. So in the meantime, let's get it's 9:13 here on the program, and looks like we'll see what's that's at 7 o'clock on. Let's bring it up here in Buffalo. Late snow. All right, when they kick off. Right here, May 15. Yeah. So anyway, what's going to be the forecast for Buffalo? I know people, here in Maryland would love to know what's the forecast in Buffalo. It's going to be light snow at 8:15 p.m. and it's going to be 33 degrees. Wow, 33 degrees. So in the meantime, let's bring in our good friend who covers the Ravens, who last week the Ravens beat the Titans, and everybody around here in was very excited for that. Do I hear a crowd? No, the crowd's silent. Let's bring in Kyle Barber here, who writes for the Baltimore Beatdown. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, man, thanks so much. Doing great. Thank you so much. I'm riding solo this evening because a couple of my guys had stuff to do, but thanks for joining us tonight. Big win last Saturday, last Sunday. The Ravens controlling Derrick Henry, and that's what we were talking about, right?
Yeah, that was part of it. Another part was also discussing the passing attack that is Ryan Tannehill, who's been incredibly successful throughout the last 2 years, to be quite honest, and his recent weapon, A.J. Brown. And they did a pretty good job in total. The first half was a little bit strugglesome, of course, with A.J. Brown scoring a touchdown, kind of bullying Marlon Humphrey on a couple of receptions. But overall, the Ravens defense did do their job and handle business and held the Tennessee Titans to only 13 points.
Exactly. Well, this weekend they're playing the Bills up there in Orchard Park. It's going to be a difficult game for Lamar Jackson because he hasn't played in the snow before. So
yeah,
how do you get yourself ready for a snow football game? That you're a kid from South Florida. Snow is not in your vocabulary.
I'm not too worried about it due to Lamar's talents being somewhat on the ground, to be honest. The man knows how to run. You got cleats on your feet. It's a lot easier to run with the cleats, I tell you that. Also, the Ravens passing attack isn't about high-flying concepts. It's not about deep threat shots. So them being short routes with sure-handed receivers, such as the hands of Mark Andrews. They have Des Bryant on the roster. And, Marquise Brown, who's struggled a lot with receptions throughout the course of this season, him catching, I believe, 7 passes on 9 targets, and the 2 targets that weren't missed were not because of drops. I think this is a solid way for the Ravens to enter into this matchup.
Yeah. Well, just talk about this. This is a whole different Bills squad. Last year, the Ravens played a somewhat almost like this type of team, but Allen was growing up as a quarterback. You could blitz him, and he threw interceptions. Now he knows to blitz. So it's going to be a difficult for the defense to control that guy.
I'll agree in some parts that, yes, this is a more developed Josh Allen. I completely agree with that for, that mantra. He's demonstrated his ability to take the next step. A lot like, most of the quarterbacks from the same draft class. Lamar Jackson has elevated his game throughout the course of his career. Baker Mayfield has grown throughout the course of his career. Those 3 guys, they're all in the playoffs still, and they all were a part of the same draft class. So I think that's pretty important. And but that being said, Don Martindale just schemed up a dominant defensive scheme that bullied the Titans, and Arthur Smith, offensive coordinator for the Titans, he's been likely heralded as the next head coach to some job, whether it be the Atlanta Falcons, which has him linked, or otherwise. He looks like he's going to be gone, but yet Don Martindale outcoached this man. With the players that he had, with the scheme that he drew up, he held Derrick Henry to 2.2 yards on 18 carries, no touchdowns, total of 40 yards. And Ryan Tannehill struggled greatly. So Josh Allen is great in his own right. I don't want to take anything away from him. But the Baltimore Ravens defense is stout in pretty much all phases, from the pass rush with Yannick Ngakoue, Pernell McPhee, Matt Judon, Calais Campbell, and Derek Wolfe. That's a lot of big names there. When you send the blitzes that the Ravens send, when they mask them and disguise them the way that they do, yes, Josh Allen is absolutely talented enough to beat the Ravens defense on Sunday, but doing so and having the ability to do so are starkly different objects in this discussion. Yeah,
I feel like Stephon Diggs is the key for the Bills because he's been tearing up the last 3 weeks. He was on my fantasy team this year, and I'm keeping him next year.
There you go.
He was tearing it up. But I think Humphries might be the guy who's going to cover him. But Humphries does have issues of pass interference calls and a little more pushing and shoving. Do you feel like he's going to try not to do that much, on Saturday night and keep Diggs under wraps?
I think the physicality is just a part of Marlon Humphrey's game, be it when you get called or when you don't get called. and the refs last week let the Ravens play. They let the offenses play, and they didn't call a whole lot of flags on them. So it depends a lot on the tightness of the officiating. That's a huge factor going into any NFL game, of course. But I think putting pressure on Stephon Diggs to fight through the physicality, even if you're going to catch a 5-yard automatic first down, defensive holding play or not, if you can eliminate him from the game, and whether that's by utilizing Marlon Humphrey in a manned coverage concept or bracket coverage, and say, because that's something that I think the Ravens might do on Sunday, is that, they see Stephon Diggs as their primary threat. If we want to win this game, we have to eliminate Stephon Diggs. What do you have to do so? If you bracket cover him, you force them to throw to, I believe, Cole Beasley. If you have to utilize Josh Allen in the running game more, you can accept those plays, but you don't want Stephon Diggs to beat you over the top. So I think Marlon Humphrey is going to do an excellent job. I'm pretty confident in this. I think they just match up better with this team than they did with the Titans, and it remains to be seen, and I'm really excited for Saturday night.
Yeah, I guess I got to put some snow tires on Gus Edwards. You might need to get the bus rolling.
Absolutely. Gus Edwards has played really great. I know his yardage total was a little bit low from last matchup, but I believe every yard was earned. That was a slugfest by both defenses, and Gus Edwards came in there and he moved the chains when he was needed and got the Ravens on the ground. So hopefully, he'll throw the snow tires on, throw the snow cleats on, whatever needs to be seen, whatever needs to be done to complete the task.
Right. Well, what's the keys for the Ravens to pull off this victory, and probably, hopefully, if Cleveland does what they did against the Steelers, you might host an AFC title game next weekend.
Man, I try. I think we talked about this last time, that we don't want to do anything more than a game at a time. That's what we mentioned last time. But that would be incredibly exciting to see Baltimore football as the AFC Championship against the Browns too, after their wonderful Monday night game that they had, the game of the year. But getting back to the keys of the game, as you'd mentioned, keys are, as I mentioned first, defeating Stephon Diggs, not allowing him to beat you and to beat you over the top, to make 10, 11 catches for over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, be it. That's something that's going to be really threatening. Number 2 is you have to win the turnover battle, whether it's you're not turning the ball over at all, or if you have to create a couple takeaways on defense or have you. That's going to be important, because in a tough game, if it's snowy, if it's super cold, you got to be smart with the football and keep it secure. The last one I'd say is let Lamar Jackson continue to do what he's done. He's the tractor of this team. He's the one that's pulling this team offensively, and just, they go where he goes. So allowing him to be the operator that he is, and to make the plays on the ground, through the air, whatever he needs to do, those are going to be critical in defeating the Buffalo Bills on Saturday night.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to keep them running. I think that's Edwards. But it's going to be fun looking at different uniforms in the snow. You got, if they bring out the red ones, it's going to be very interesting. And
I'm hoping the Ravens go all white. I'm hoping the Ravens go all white, and they only have the helmets to disguise themselves, and they can sneak through, and they can slash and gash, and the defense can be masked from the snow. It's a whole concept that I'm really hoping pays off.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody where you do Baltimore Beatdown. What are you guys working on? I know the playoffs is the one you're working on right now, but what else? What other stories are you working on?
Absolutely. Well, the playoffs are going to be the big thing. We talked a lot about how general manager Eric DeCosta built this roster to defeat the Titans, and they did so, and this season has already looked like a success. But overall, they want this team to go as far as they can, which is, of course, a Super Bowl. We'll see if they can manage that. As for where you can find me, you can find my Twitter account at @BB_Kyle P. Barber. Also, I do live stream on Twitch. I answer a bunch of questions there for Ravens fans and football fans, also hockey fans. So you got the hockey background pulled up right there. I'm a very huge hockey fan. I think I like it a little bit more than football, to be quite honest. So the Avs are playing tonight. I'm a big Colorado Avalanche guy. So let's go Avs. And you can find me on my Twitch at twitch.tv/Baltimore Beatdown.
That's cool. Thanks, Kyle. Thank you so much, and I hope to talk to you. Let's do this again next Wednesday.
I'd love to keep this going every single week with you, Chris. That sounds like a plan. You take care.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Bye. All right, folks. That's Kyle Barber, who covers the the Ravens for Baltimore Beatdown. Let's bring in our last guest of the evening. He covers the Washington Capitals for NBC Washington. JJ Regan joined us. Hey, JJ, thanks for joining us. I'm glad you. I didn't know if you got my message today. I didn't know if you got it. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, sure. Anytime, Chris.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Capitals. This year everybody's playing in one division because of the pandemic here going on. So what does the Capitals got to do to win the East again?
Well, it's going to be a tough division. They are in quite easily the toughest division in hockey. They added the Boston Bruins, who were the President's Trophy winners last year. So I think the thing is, it's a shortened season. You have to get off to a good start. They have a new head coach this year. You can't have a month or two of growing pains of learning under Peter Laviolette. They're going to have to hit the ground running, because otherwise they may find themselves on the outside looking in the playoff picture, and it's going to be hard to climb back in just because you don't have the time that you would in a normal season. So they're definitely going to have to come out right away. Ilya Samsonov is going to have to be every bit the goalie who they expected him to be when they drafted him in the first round. He's 23 years old. He only has 26 games of NHL experience, but the guy behind him, Vitek Vanecek, has no games of NHL experience. It's an inexperienced tandem. I think he is the goalie of the future. I do like him a lot, but he's never been the number one in any stop in his career. He was the up-and-comer in the KHL. He was the up-and-comer in the AHL, and then last year he was the up-and-comer in the NHL. So he's never been the number one. He's going to have to be able to handle that opportunity, and the Caps are going to have to get off to a great start because it is a tough division.
Yeah. Let's talk about the key accusations. You guys got a guy from Boston who I guess he's going to be that enforcer. I guess he's one of those guys that, it was very shocking that he's been up in Boston for every year for a 1-year deal, and now the Caps got him. So let's talk about his what he's going to bring to the team.
Right, so Zdeno Chara is 43 years old, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. He's not going to be a top-line guy. He was one of the best defensemen in the NHL for a long time, but he's just not that guy anymore. He's going to come in, and he's going to play on the third pair initially. I think what the Capitals are going to do, because they have a lot of offensively gifted defensemen in their defense, I think it's going to be a situational thing where he's going to come in playing the third pair, and then if the Caps are playing from ahead, they're going to be looking to plug him in with a John Carlson on the top pair in those situations, because Dmitry Orlov and John Carlson playing together on a top pair is a whole lot of offense and not a great pairing for what you would want if you're trying to protect a 1 or 2 goal lead. So we'll see how many games Chara plays. I mean, he averaged 21 minutes last year for the President's Trophy winning Boston Bruins. So clearly he's in shape. They're not going to have to cut his minutes back to 15 or so a night to be effective. He can be effective for them. He will bring some tenacity. He will bring some physical play. It's what he does best. He's 6'9". Obviously, that should be what he does best. I don't think he's going to play every game this year, but you know what? They have a lot of depth all of a sudden. Jonas Siegenthaler is literally 20 years younger than he is and established himself as an everyday NHLer last year. So on days where they need to give Chara off, they can plug Siegenthaler in, and he does almost everything that Chara does. He's not as physical, but he is a penalty killer. He is a defensive-minded guy. So Chara will be a key defensive and leadership acquisition. I think really what they want was the leadership, but it also adds depth. It's not just relying on Jonas Siegenthaler, a second-year player, to handle the load of what they hope will be a championship roster.
Exactly. Losing the goalie Holtby for the whole. He got. Where did he go? Did he go back home to Vancouver?
He went to Vancouver. Yeah.
Yeah. So how is that going to be the void for goalie? Because you were just talking about it. You got Lundqvist, who was supposed to come down and play. Now he has that health issue that he's not going to be around. And then you got the rookies and all that stuff. Is that the one thing that they got to work on?
So I think the biggest question mark for this team heading into the season is goaltending. Now, granted, Holtby has been on the decline. His last 3 years have not been good. He wasn't great last year either. And statistically, having Ilya Samsonov play more games this year should be an upgrade at that position. But as I mentioned before, he's just has never been the number one. He's never had to shoulder that load before. So you just don't know what it's going to be like. And that's why, Henrik Lundqvist was coming in to mentor him. And I know people were excited about him possibly challenging for the number one, but I always thought it was unrealistic to think that a 38-year-old goalie coming off statistically his worst season would be your number one goalie. I mean, if your 23-year-old future franchise goalie can't beat him out, that's an issue. So the success of the Caps this year was always going to be based on Samsonov and what he could provide the Capitals. It's just that now there's no safety net. If he does struggle, when he does hit those valleys in a season where goalies go from highs to lows, if he does struggle, he's just going to have to play it out. You're not going to have a guy like a Henrik Lundqvist or a Braden Holtby to plug in there. Now they do have Craig Anderson, but he's on the taxi squad, and because of the cap situation, it's going to be difficult to shuffle the taxi squad and get those guys on the active roster. So it's probably going to be Samsonov and Vitek Vanacek for the foreseeable future, which means that the success of the Capitals will be dependent on what Ilya Samsonov is able to do.
Yeah. Well, talk about the taxi squad. Where are they going to be practicing? Are they going to be like baseball? Like they're going to be in one place and just keep practicing until somebody calls them like, we need somebody out ASAP?
Right. So they're going to travel. They are able to travel with the team.
Okay.
As far as I believe they do practice separately in order to sort of have some separation. And it's just a way it's 4 to 6 players. One of them has to be a goalie. And it's just a way for them in case there is an outbreak, which we're going to see at some point this season. I don't know if it's the Capitals, but we already saw the Dallas Stars. Their first games were postponed. You're going to see these this season. It's just a way for them to have players on hand where you can plug into the lineup. How exactly it's going to work, I mean, we've never seen this before. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I know at least initially the plan is for the taxi squad to practice separately from the regular roster. And we'll see ultimately how it goes. But they will travel with the team and be available for those road games in case somebody does come down with COVID or is a late scratch.
Yeah, and the road games are going to be 2 games back to back, so they don't go for one game and then come back home. And like years past, it's been one game in Calgary and then back home.
Right,
they're going to be in the same place twice, and then they move on.
Right. The vast majority of the schedule is grouped in the 2-game series. There are a handful of one-offs with some teams there just to make the schedule fit. But the vast majority of the season will be 2-game series, which should be interesting because, in hockey, a physical game, there could be some animosity carried over into that second game. So it should make those second games pretty interesting. And especially for a Capitals team where you have one goalie who you expect to carry the load and another goalie with no NHL experience. Do you give Samsonov those back-to-backs? It's going to be a tough question for Peter Laviolette to manage.
Yeah. And real quick before I let you go, with postseason, are they going to do the same thing they did last year? Because that was really interesting. They threw like everybody in except for a couple teams. It was like, hey, here we go, have fun with the postseason. And then it was like they kept playing until I think they played until like August.
Yeah, I think if I recall, a cup was not awarded until maybe in the first week of October. It stretched on for a while. It's not going to be a play-in. They're going to go back to 16 teams, but it is different in that it's the top 4 teams in each division. So there's no wild card, which going back to what we talked about, how tough the Caps division is, it doesn't matter if the Caps are the 5th best team in the league. If they're the 5th best team in the division, then they're out of the playoffs. And they're in a tough division. So you've got to win. You got to be in the top 4 in your division, regardless of how tough it is, which means there is a playoff team in that division who's going to be out of the playoffs, who's not going to make it.
Right, exactly. Well, JJ, everything starts out tomorrow against Buffalo. At what time is that game? 7 o'clock or 4 o'clock?
7 o'clock. 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, and you guys will be doing that on NBC Washington and on Caps apps and all that stuff, right?
Yep, it'll be on NBC Sports Washington.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on. We'll try to talk to you throughout the season, see how everything goes.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, take care.
I'll see you. All right, folks. That's JJ Regan, who covers the Washington Capitals, reporter for NBC Washington. So, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. I want to say thank you for George Bashura for joining us here this evening. We were a little over our time schedule here because he came on at 9:25. Also, thanks to everybody who makes this thing possible. We'll be on next week, and next week I think I want to put circle this on your calendar because we have these guys coming on. We have live interviews with Mike McMurphy, who does a great job up in New Hampshire. He just won the Sportscaster of the Year award, a good friend of ours. He will be joining us, and also Johnny Holliday, the voice of the Maryland Terrapins, used to do He used to be a DJ. He used to be a rock and roll DJ. He used to down in Miami introduce the Beatles and all that stuff. So we'll try to talk to him some, his third year winning Maryland State Sportscaster of the Year, and Ryan Harris, our interview taped sometime next week with Ryan Harris, the Colorado Sportscaster of the Year, the former Bronco who won the Super Bowl 50 a couple years ago, and now he does Notre Dame football on the radio. So, folks, thanks for joining us this evening, and we'll see you all next Wednesday night here on Herb FM Sports Radio on StreamYard. Thanks to our guests to join us, Coach Grant, and Bill O'Neill, Dave LaMont, and also JJ Regan from the NBC Sports Washington. For now, until then, I'm Chris Heidel. Have a great evening, everybody. Thanks for joining.